Alright,
guys,
I'm a YouTuber.
We are here in Speakers Corner.
I'm a YouTuber.
We have a lovely gentleman. What's your name?
Stephen with a V.
Steve.
Stephen George France.
Okay, Steve here. We got
Stephen George France.
That's correct.
France, as in.
The country.
Are you serious?
I'm 100%
Oh, wow.
telling you the truth. What was the first thing that I said? All I expect is the truth.
Nothing but the truth.
Nothing.
Speak the truth and it should
Doesn't
be
mean
the
you're going to
truth.
answer. Doesn't mean you're going to answer.
Yeah.
Nice watch.
Thank you, Ali.
What's the topic today?
So the topic is, firstly, we're just going to introduce ourselves. And again, Stephen, yeah?
Stephen.
I want you to know something, Stephen. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to make you change your mind. We're on the same team, yeah? We're just going
Talking to me or Steve?
You shut your mouth.
Okay.
We're just exchanging ideas, Stephen. There's no animosity. There's no, oh, my side is right, your side is right. We're just going to bounce off each other. If you disagree with something, you're more than welcome to throw it my way, and then we can go your way as well. If you're unhappy with anything, just let me know. And then, like I said, you're more than welcome to leave whenever you want. How does that sound?
Let's get it on.
Excellent, excellent. So, Stephen, how would you describe yourself in terms of your theology? Do you believe in God? Do you not believe in God? Are you unsure? Do you believe in Allah? Do you say Allahu Akbar? What's the deal?
I'll leave it open. I'll leave it open.
Okay, excellent.
You can't dismiss anything. Do you understand? We can't dismiss anything. So,
Brilliant answer. Fantastic. So, would you agree with me and tell me if there's any more options that you think of? When we look at the universe, 4 options come to mind. Number 1, either it was created from nothing. Number 2, either it created itself. Number 3, either it was created by someone, but that someone doesn't have a beginning. Or number 4, it was created by someone and it does have a beginning. Is there any other options, or do you think it's one of these options?
well, it's
Doesn't say that. Don't say that because he's going to bring you in a trap. So, no, just
he's trying to do that.
conversation.
You're smart enough to know if I'm going to bring you into a trap.
Listen, the questions were open-ended. There is no beginning and there is no end to anything. We haven't got, in my mind, there's nothing. You can only go, if you go back to the singularity, what happens at that point of singularity? That's basically what you're asking. What is the start of that point?
Yeah, where did that singularity come from?
Who knows? Who knows? Nobody has the answer yet.
So that's why
Nobody's convinced me of the answer yet.
Right. So of those 4 options that I've given from the beginning, whether you want to call it a singularity, whether you want to call it a big bang, whether you want to call it a quantum vacuum, whatever you want to call it, how would you say that it started? Or where out of these 4, that's why I gave you 2 options. I said, is it one of these 4 options, or do you think there's a 5th option?
All options are open. I don't know. I'm still searching for the answer.
Okay.
I'm still searching for the answer. That's why, a lot of days I spend thinking about these type of things. Where is the edge of space and where's the beginning? Who knows? Unless you've got a theory, I'm open to.
Yeah, we're just going to bounce off each other and we're just going to see where it takes us.
Okay.
Again, like the brother, I don't know, he's alluding that I'm going to trap you or something like that. You're intelligent enough to know when you've been trapped. And
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
But don't you think, I'm so sorry, don't you think it's relevant to a conversation like we started with liberal values and a society? I mean, why is it important? Where does it start? It started with Big Bang and chaos and God or no God.
Because you've answered your own question. You said, where did it all start from? Why is it important where it started from?
Why is it important?
Because in every story there's a beginning. Everything has a beginning, it has a start. And it's important if we join the conversation in the middle, if we start in the beginning, then we're more likely to have an objective view of everything. If we start in the middle and we start with man-made laws and everything, we're just going to keep running around in circles.
But do you know what I see when I look at the universe? There's always an opposite. There's always an opposite.
What makes you think?
Well, say for instance, if you're looking for general relativity theory, which is the study of the very large, and that is why we understand gravity. The opposite of that, we have string theory or quantum mechanics. So you can either go one direction, what explains the large, or you go in the other direction, you have quantum mechanics, which explains the small. And none of them can exist without the other. So, and actually, some of the principles of general relativity, when you go down into the quantum mechanics, it actually goes against what the general relativity theory is. So everything what we take for granted, what is in cast iron. So general relativity is generally thought of as being in cast iron, okay? But when you go to the other way, into quantum mechanics, them things and them principles actually break down and no longer are valid. So there's a crossover actually. How does that work?
Okay.
How can something like that be opposite? Because you talk about hypocrisies and hypocrites. Well, the special relationship between them two things, what's govern the principles of our planet and our time, actually go in opposite directions.
So what you've done is, quite honestly, you've exposed the philosophy of science. And the philosophy of science itself doesn't claim that anything is in cast iron, like you said. So no scientist will claim that the theory of relativity is cast iron.
That is
Newtonian
true.
physics
That is
was
true.
cast iron. In fact, science by its nature undergoes paradigm shifts. And the paradigm shifts of Newtonian physics to Einsteinian physics and now to quantum mechanics is by nature bound to change. However, what was very interesting was when you're talking about the nature of our universe, you're talking about the singularity. But again, if I was to probe you, when it comes to asking people that believe in science and the likes, they say, it happened by itself. Yeah, the universe created itself, or the universe was created from nothing. Yeah, that's what Stephen Hawking says in The Grand Design. And when John Lennox then pushes back at that, again, the laws of logic break down. Because for you to say X created Y makes sense. Yeah, I created the watch makes sense. But to say the watch created the watch doesn't make sense, because that presupposes that the watch existed to begin with. So when people say the universe created itself, that presupposes the existence of the universe. So that's called in scientific terms as a cosmic bootstrap, that you are trying to lift yourself up from the laces of your boots. And also when people delve into this, they say, the law of gravity, or quantum mechanics, or the theory of relativity.
So you're saying we can't use them things to measure things, measure time and space?
Yeah, well, you've hit the nail on the head, because laws are prescriptive and descriptive. They are not creative.
But they can be changed.
So
they
them.
can flip between the two. They can change and evolve.
The thing is, Stephen, our understanding of laws is constantly changing and evolving.
So then what about when we talk about religious scriptures? Can they evolve or can they change?
The thing is, when we're talking about religious scriptures, there's actually three things that we'll need to delve into.
But just to clarify though, if we are saying that these things in the universe can change and switch and morph into other different things, can ultimately, when we speak about religion, can them things also do the same?
No.
So they're cast iron then. But these other things within the universe are not cast iron. But religion can be cast iron.
I'll tell you.
By man. So who wrote these holy scriptures?
Let me answer that question.
It's very interesting though.
Yeah, so science is based on empiricism. Yeah? What you can observe, what you can observe and what you can measure and stuff like this. Religion, on the other hand, does not solely rely on empiricism. It relies on empiricism, logic, ontology, and philosophy. So when we base all of these things, that's when we then get religious concepts. On the other hand, science is on empiricism and is different. That's why we're juggling a few balls here. So if I can just finish that one point, then we'll come to how religious scriptures can be compared and which religious scripture can change, which religious scripture can't change. So coming back to your initial point, when you're talking about all these scientific things, forces are descriptive, and prescriptive. They are not creative. For example,
should we believe in any sciences?
Well, we do believe in science, but not in the way that it's infallible, that it can't change. And in fact, that's in line with the definition of science, that science by nature is evolving, because science relies on induction.
Everything evolves.
Not everything evolves. Yeah, we'll come to that. Trust me, it's going to be a really nice conversation, Steve. Yeah, but I don't want to answer everything in one go because we're just going to burn out. Yeah, the science thing is very interesting, and we're going to keep coming back to that. That's why the forces thing, I just want to lay that to rest with two very good examples. The theory of arithmetic. Yeah, how 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, if I have £1,000 in my bank and I put another £1,000 in my bank, the theory of arithmetic can tell me I now have £2,000 in my bank. However, the theory of arithmetic can't give me £2,000. It doesn't create anything. Me, when I hit a snooker ball, yeah, with the stick, I can, using science, explain the laws of motion, but it's not science that's making the ball move. So when we then, like Stephen Hawking did, when we say that, oh, the force did this, that's actually false, because forces themselves are just prescriptive. They describe things. They don't create things. They don't cause things to move. So laying that to rest, when we are analyzing our reality, that's why you had the likes of Descartes. Are you familiar with Descartes? Yeah, you had Descartes, you had Hume, and you had philosophers that used their understanding of logic and philosophy to come to conclusions. Because to some degree, you have to understand, well, I hope you'll understand, Stephen, we cannot rest on science to answer everything. For example, will you agree with me by saying that science cannot answer why questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can say that because nothing's ever guaranteed.
Yeah.
Nothing's guaranteed. But can I go back to what you said about something what's not produced, what doesn't then create a force, a will of someone doing things?
Sure, go ahead.
So if we put digital numbers in a bank account, digital, not just in an account, them numbers will let somebody or make somebody do something. And all ours digitized numbers on a screen.
That's a very good point.
Do you understand that?
I like that.
How does that work?
That's a nice one.
Because then, you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, it's a nice one.
So we have, it's not even physical money anymore.
Yeah.
So we put these numbers on a screen, but that then creates people to do things. So it has got a force.
Listen to what you're saying. You're saying someone presses a button.
I couldn't clarify that though. I couldn't clarify that.
But in order for that sentence to make sense grammatically, you had to say someone's pressing a button, someone's inputting the data, and that's what it comes down to, Stephen. That someone has to start that process off, otherwise to assume that it happened by itself doesn't make sense. Even a computer program requires a program.
So do you not think that things can come round open-ended? So there's always got to be a beginning and always got to be an end. Do you think that?
The thing is, it depends what you're talking about, and that's why we're now going to have to go into philosophy in order to answer that. Because empiricism by itself, it can't answer those questions. That's why right in the middle, I was saying science can't answer why questions. Science can't tell you what consciousness is. Science can't tell you the difference between the mind and the body. That whole issue of dualism is still there.
These monotheistic religions, they seem to have a beginning, they have a story, whether it's Christianity or whether it's Islam or Buddhism. There's something happened, whether it's Allah or God or Buddha. But the religion, what really makes me think, because it is really open-ended, is Hinduism.
Yeah.
And they believe in reincarnation. And as far back as man has tried to trace, it actually petters out. There's no beginning of Hinduism. They haven't found it.
Brahma.
No, Brahma is a god. You have Lord Krishna, Brahma. What's the other three? You have three spirits. But there isn't a definitive. It's not a monotheistic religion. So there is no. If you go into the British Museum, there's no beginning. They can only trace it back to about 7,000 or 8,000 years. No beginning. And they believe in reincarnation. Yet these other religions, they believe definitively in a time and a date, and then move forward from there.
The thing is, Hinduism has an origin story. They believe that there was a beginning to everything. However, they believe, like you correctly said, that things get recycled, there is reincarnation, but they also believe...
But there isn't a definitive time. They haven't got a date in the calendar. They don't have a specific date of this coming or anything.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, a bit like, you could say the universe or something. It's just the beginning. And it just happens. They haven't got one of these people, haven't got a standout person who's come forward. So they've just got this religion what just goes back so many thousands of years, and this religion believes in reincarnation. Is that a strange, do you think that's just a coincidence?
No, what I'm saying is you have a misconception of Islam. Like you think that Islam has a founder. Out of curiosity, who do you think is the founder of Islam?
Well, the person who I know of is Muhammad.
Yeah.
as Muhammad.
Yeah,
But
and-
that was a definitive time, was it not? What century was that?
But
The 6th.
632 was when
And then he
passed
had,
away.
and then where was the point where the two brothers had a fallen out, and then the two religions went, or the two,
That was
We're talking about the time of Prophet Adam, Habil and Qabil.
and then they went two separate ways.
They were two separate ways,
The
yes.
Sunni way and the, what's the other one?
talking about Sunni. That was 700.
Yeah, about 7
yeah,
yeah,
but the
they
thing-
split. So is there not two different types of Islamic preachings there, or teachings?
Right. So that's a very good question. The thing is, it's not necessarily your fault or the fault of the viewers that sometimes they believe that Islam has a founder, because this is something that even is taught in the RE lessons in secondary school as well.
No, but
It's-
there's a messenger, wasn't there? There was a messenger to Muhammad.
yeah, but
But
Stephen,
there was
that-
no messenger to Hinduism, that's all I'm saying.
No, but that's the misconception that I'm trying to address. That a founder implies that it began at that time, but we don't believe that Islam began at the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him. We believe it began from the time, from the first person that was created, which was Prophet Adam. The first human that came, that's when Islam started. So we believe as Muslims that every prophet, approximately 124,000, they were all Muslims. They lived in different parts of the world and they had different
How old-
followers.
how
Let me
old-
just finish this point, yeah? So they believed, so they propagated monotheism, which was the belief in one God,
Yes.
and following them as a messenger. It could be in the Indian subcontinent, it could be in Europe, it could be in Africa, it could be in China. However, again, as human beings, we are limited again to empiricism, like manuscripts. We're dependent on, again, testimony. Like, for example, whatever you learn in school, most of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're more than welcome to interject, most of what you learned was testimony, which means based on what somebody told you, but that somebody was trustworthy according to what your parents and the head teacher had told you. So when you were taught about science, you were told that the teacher is responsible, they are qualified, but you didn't go out in the field, you didn't dig and see the fossils, you didn't do the experimentation, you didn't go and speak to the philosophers.
Yeah, you could say that about anything though.
Not necessarily. I'll tell you why.
I read a fantastic book by Bill Bryson, The Short History of Anybody. Have anybody read that? The Short History of
Yeah, it's a
Everything.
very good book.
It's a very good book. And he does that. He goes and delves off and he finds out why we have all these answers in science. And unless I'm going around and becoming an expert in 25,000 different fields, then how would I've got to at some point trust some information, and of course you are correct. You can question what we actually learn in the British education system, because it's only a fraction of what they want you to know. But then that's when we're going to go into something else there.
Yeah. We'll
But
put that on ice for now.
but everything's an opinion though. Everything. I mean, I'm pretty well read for somebody from up in the northeast of England, but I still haven't got all that knowledge. It's impossible for me. So at some point, of course, I'm going to have to trust some of this information
Agreed.
coming towards me. But the way that I mitigate that is by having multiple sources. I'll do podcasts, I'll read a book, I'll try and draw a general picture of all of these things, and that's what's led me here today to listen to you.
Very good. I appreciate that, Stephen. I don't know about you, but I'm enjoying this conversation. You're touching on topics that are so fascinating and so interesting. So now what you've hit upon is called testimony. Yeah. So, and what you've also done is you've said, in order for me to mitigate a mistake, I need to hear it from multiple sources. But what you haven't said is how you can now transcend that. Now, the way you can transcend that, maybe you might be able to transcend that one generation. Now, how would you transcend that? You now have to be dependent upon manuscripts. Now, how do I get a manuscript from Eurasia, and how old would it be? 100, 200 years old? Then how do I check its authenticity? Now, again, it will be reduced and it has to come to a stop. Now, as in Islam, our testimony is completely different. Yeah, and this is what makes Islam's Quran veracious compared to any other book. And we have a three-pronged approach in which we prove the veracity of the Quran. Number one, the Quran has been preserved orally. Number two, it has been preserved by a live language. And number three, it has been preserved by manuscripts. Yeah. Now, what I mean by that is, if you compare all of the religions, Stephen, for example, let's look at the New Testament of the Christians. It's revealed in, Jesus spoke Aramaic. so who knows? But I mean, they're saying it's in Greek. Is Greek one of the top 5 languages? Is it spoken generally? No. Let's look at Hebrew of the Old Testament. Is it spoken generally? It's not. Let's look at Sanskrit of the Hindus. Is it spoken? Is it accessible? It's actually not accessible. Jesus' language of Aramaic is actually not accessible. Let's look at Arabic. It is. It's actually at number 4 or number 5. It actually fluctuates. It's a live language. Let's look at manuscripts. Muslims are the only ones who claim to have manuscripts of the original Quran. And we make the claim it's the same book that was there at the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Could you say that within the language, with a definitive fact, that there's never ever been even a slang word introduced into that language, ever? So there's never been an abbreviation ever in that language? Because I have a friend who's from Miami, and he's Cuban, and I travel around the world with him. And he speaks Spanish, but his Spanish, and this is what he says the further south, it's a Spanish, but it's a totally different Spanish, and it's different to the Spanish what is spoken within Spain. So could you say with 100% clarity, and I do understand this, I have read that in order to preserve Islamic practices or the faith, that you read the Quran so that you know it word by word, help preserve that. But can you say that there's no difference ever? There's never ever been even a different vowel or word or pronunciation or one bit of slang in that language?
Very good.
Not one.
Very good.
As in no altering, because remember the universe evolved, everything. So
yeah, and that's why, Stephen, I'm giving a 3-pronged approach. Number 1 is the living language Arabic. Let's keep that to the side by now, yeah? Because Arabic itself is accessible to everybody, no worries, brilliant, fantastic. Manuscript evidence and verbal evidence, yeah? Now when it comes to something verbal, now, can you verify that since we've been here, the crowd has changed? There are brothers that have come and some brothers have gone and some brothers I don't know here, yeah? Now I can tell you confidently, I can read a passage of the Quran, I can introduce something in this passage in front of you and they'll be able to correct me.
yes.
Okay. Qul huwallahu ahmad. Is that right or wrong? Qul huwallahu ahmad. Is that right or wrong? Qul huwallahu ahmad. Right or wrong? Wrong. What's the correct one? Qul huwallahu ahad. Qul huwallahu. Qul huwallahu. So verbal preservation, this is a beautiful way in which the Quran is the only book that claims perfect preservation. In fact, in the Sunday Times, there was a poll that was done in 1997 of vicars. They asked vicars to regurgitate the 10 commandments, and 2 out of 3 vicars struggled. Now these are a few lines, but when it comes to the Quran, I think it's like 9,000 or 11,000 lines of the Quran, depending on how big the size of the Quran is. You've got Muslims as young as 6. In Palestine, there was a girl as young as 6 that has memorized it. And just like I've proven to you here, Stephen, my friend, this is why Islam is special, because Islam, or the religion from God, naturally is supposed to be accessible to everybody. I can't give a highfalutin argument that us academics can understand, but somebody else would struggle. It needs to be something that a rational individual can come and go, you know what, that makes sense. So in terms of a live language, we've proven that, okay, the Quran is something that's special. In terms of manuscript, the oldest manuscript that we have is actually located in this country, in Birmingham. It's actually 4 folios. You can you can Google this when you go home. There's a BBC article. It's actually one of the top 3 when you Google it. Oldest Quran manuscript. It's in this country. Muslims, it's not even a Muslim country. Birmingham, and the carbon dating was actually done by the University of Oxford. They've carbon dated it. And you can check, I've got cameras here. Everything that I'm saying, you can go home and you can check it. So it was carbon dated, and they did exactly what you said. They put the Quran that we have and they compared it with the folios. And Stephen, me standing here, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm telling you the founding that they found from, I think it's 645 AD. they said there is 100% word accuracy. You can check this yourself. That's the oldest manuscript. You know what I've done? I've actually
Are you
printed
happy?
it
Are you
out.
happy that that manuscript is in the UK?
Do you know why I am happy with that? It's because some people, when I'm speaking to them, Stephen, when I ask them, where do you think this manuscript is? They're gonna say, oh, it's probably in a Muslim country. Oh, it's probably, you guys are probably saying this and it's probably done by your guys. The fact that it's in a non-Muslim country, I think it objectively is in favor of a true seeker. It makes it easier for them to distinguish and say, you know what, okay, I can accept that. Now, let me ask you, Stephen, what do you think about these things that I've told you about how the Quran has been preserved as opposed to, as opposed to the other books? What do you think about what I've just said?
I think that's I took note of that. The fact that I've already acknowledged the fact that when you got these three brothers here and you used the whatever
A verse of the Quran,
and they were able to repeat that.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
that preservation is there. But for me, I still then, as you were speaking about that, I start thinking about the original question, which was about before we ended up on camera, which was about religion and state, and how do we separate them two, and how we got we got the scripture within the UK, which is a freedom-loving country and a secular country. Now, when you were speaking about, we were originally speaking about homosexuality. Is that correct? And you should also, obviously, freedom of speech. If you use it in title to say that it's not something you agree with. So would you say that the way that Islam is taught in the UK, could that evolve and could that change? Is that somewhat you're scared of? Maybe.
I think what you've proven, Stephen, is that the way Islam is taught does need to be changed, because when you said yourself that the founder of Islam is the Prophet Muhammad, and then there's certain other misconceptions that gets put forward, unfortunately and sadly, Orthodox Muslims are not consulted when it comes to the curriculum that we have, and when it comes to the relevant stuff that's actually being taught. The stuff that's taught is the sort of stuff that's in line with the liberal curriculum, which again constantly changes based upon the whimsical desires of the people.
But if you introduce something into a liberal society, then that will change. That's the way it happens. And the example what I give, I've got a partner who's Indian, right? And my family's from West India.
Nice.
West Indies. So maybe when they first came across, they wouldn't have wanted or acknowledged that relationship. But eventually, after each generation, it changes. And if you think that her grandfather was going to come from India and come here and just keep it that way, it's pretty much impossible. Things have to change at some point.
That's a good point.
Things have to change at some point.
But
So you could have someone who studies Islam over here, and it might change for them.
But when you say something changes, Stephen, why would something change? Correct?
Because you've introduced that into a society what's liberal.
Right. So in other words, what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if something...
I'm not saying this is right or wrong, by the way.
No
We're just saying, look,
I
because I've
appreciate
seen this even within my personal relationship.
Yeah.
Things will change.
Yeah.
When people come here, things will change.
Yeah.
You can still have certain things, but it'll change or deviate, or maybe come up with something even better.
Yeah. The thing is, but you've actually, I'm good, you actually stopped me and you finished your sentence, because you said, what if we were to deviate and come up with something better? Mm-hmm. But that's assuming that you believe that the thing before is not better, that it is not the best it can be. And Stephen,
Or something different then.
Stephen, think of it this way. I believe in God. I believe He is perfect in every facet. He's the most kind, the most merciful, the all knowledgeable. And if He's given me a book, He's given me a way of life, that way of life is the best. No Larry, no Mr. Singh, no Mr. Wong, no whatever can come and start telling me, oh yeah, by the way, why can't we add this in? Hang on, Mr. Wong or Mr. Larry or Mr. Singh. You're telling me that you have more insight than God? You're telling me you have more
What I'm
insight?
suggesting, I'm not saying I think, what I've seen, when you introduce something into liberal society, it will change. Look, for instance, the capitalist system, right?
Yeah.
the West has had a hegemony over that for as long as possible, and all of a sudden, China's come up with a deviation, and that now actually threatens the hegemony of the West, because they've blended maybe state with capitalism, and that's a scary thing for some people, because maybe. Do you understand what I'm getting at there?
I do.
So they've come up with a form of
Interesting.
capitalism,
Fascinating, yeah.
but their capitalism, I'm not saying better, but could be more successful.
May I just
But what we're saying, Stephen, is
Or more. I don't know. And I'm not saying
I
I'm a capitalist.
absolutely understand.
And I'm not saying I'm from the left, all right?
Yes,
I'm just
yes.
giving that as an example.
Yeah, no, fine.
So when you drop something into some other area, it will evolve. Getting back to the question again, it will change. It will do what needs to be done. So yes, of course, we have them three principles, what you've said, regarding
the preservation.
the
of the Quran.
preservation. But when you introduce whatever that is, of course you're going to have people who love God and who want to preserve something this way. But ultimately, there will always be other people. Just a bit like when we're talking about the general relativity and the quantum mechanics, they will always have to be an opposite. There'll always have to be something drawn on the other side. That's the way it is. If I was to say to you, up, what would you say, or what could you say? If I said up,
Down.
down. If I said male,
said?
male or female,
Yeah.
strong, weak, dark, light, that's not some superficial, bullshit. That is the law and order of the universe.
Stephen, you're still falling in the same trap. And let me elucidate this trap in.
But how do we have
in
these
a way
things
of
that
an
are positive
example.
and a
Let me
negative?
give you an example.
Black and white.
Let me give you an example. You have a big puzzle, a big puzzle that has been put together. As human beings,
But that puzzle doesn't have edges.
let me give you an example. Let's stick with this for now, You have a big puzzle picture.
Yes.
As human beings, we'll see things like we'll see one piece, two piece, three piece, because as human beings, our faculties of seeing, understanding are limited.
Is there a
And-
fourth dimension? I had to say it. Is there a fourth dimension?
If there is a fourth dimension, God knows the fourth dimension, and He knows everything that exists, and bearing all that in
But do
mind,
you
He's
think
given
that?
us
Do you
that
think there
there's
might be a
laws.
fourth? You think there might be a fourth dimension?
You know what, Stephen? If there is a fourth dimension, I welcome it. If there's a fifth dimension, I welcome it. It doesn't change my belief in God. In fact, God and religion and science fit together. They actually marry each other. And that's why, and that's what we were also speaking in the golden age of Islam, a lot of these discoveries were done by Muslims. And a lot of scientific discoveries and sociological discoveries, the Muslims actually contributed to. And coming back to this example, it's exactly this, that as Muslims, as human beings, we see the pixel, Allah sees the picture. So when a law comes down, the law takes everything into consideration, and then the law comes down.
But can we really see? Are we able to really see what's in front of us? That is the
We're
question,
not.
isn't it? Can we see
is-
that?
But Stephen, God is. And that's why I started, and that's why we needed a beginning to determine if there is a creator or not. Because that's integral, that if you believe in God, then you believe in objective morality. And if you believe in objective morality, which again, by the way, can't be proven by science or by liberalism, no liberal person can come in this park here right now on camera and say this is right and this is wrong.
100%. And just to go back to something, getting back to physics and science though, science does actually believe that if you had a pendulum, you know a pendulum? And you let it dangle, it would never ever be exactly down the middle. Do you know that? It cannot, physically, they cannot say that it is exactly dead center. It has to be, even if it's a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth, to the left or to the right. They can't say that. What do you think that type of thing suggests?
So I'll tell you what that suggests. That suggests that pendulum had somebody to start it off to begin with. And
So then it keeps going, doesn't it? It goes on and goes on and goes on.
it keeps going.
How does he explain the changes that took place during the time of life of Prophet Muhammad? For example, alcohol was allowed, but alcohol became forbidden. That's a change. That's a societal change, because he saw that alcohol is destructive to the society. Ban it. There is a hadith, and from that time it's banned. So, in point of this question, should the humanity or society change? I mean, you said it's unchanged, even brought the
Exactly, so I'm
example
saying
of-
it doesn't change, nothing changes.
Can I just answer the pendulum thing that you said? Because that was a good point.
It's a good point, isn't it?
Can I just finish it? and then we can answer your friend's point. He got upset. But I didn't want to interrupt because we're having a conversation, isn't it? So the pendulum, you said it goes on forever. I would disagree because by the laws of the same science that you're talking, eventually it would cause corrosion. And that metal would corrode, and eventually, based on the other variables that you have, that pendulum can actually be destroyed. And even if that destruction happens by our sun exploding, turning into a supernova or whatnot, it has an end date. No one in their right mind would say that pendulum will go on ad infinitum forever.
Yes, but it
What do you think about that?
it can never ever be straight down the middle. It
No
can't
problem.
be there.
I'm
it
happy
can't
with
be
that.
there. No, it was a good one. It was a good one. You come
No, I
back
like
with
that.
something good there.
You like that though, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I did like
Yeah?
that one. I like that one.
You like that.
Look, I'm gonna have to get off, boys.
Oh, it was so nice speaking to you.
We touched some good things there, didn't we?
Yeah, it was
Did you
brilliant.
enjoy that one? With some good points raised, wasn't it?
Which part of Lincolnshire are you from?
Newcastle,
Or Newcastle?
northeast. Northeast, we get forgetting about.
Stephen, I told you, you'll enjoy it, and if you want, you move away, you walk away, and stuff like that.
Where do I find you? Will you put this on YouTube?
Yeah, so it's going to be on a few channels. I don't know who started when. You could, I don't know which camera was here before. I don't know. I think Salam, yeah? It's going to be on Salam? But what does he type in? Because there's like 3 Salams, isn't it? No, it won't. Yeah, Salam Speakers Corner.
Will you be on there?
I will be on there speaking to you.
Have you
My
got your
channel
own
is
channel?
different. Yeah, it's called Smile to Jannah. Smile to Jannah means smile to paradise.
Smile to Paradise.
You like
Do you know
that,
this is? You're gonna love this. Do you know what one of my jobs actually is?
Go on.
Working for a company called the Paradise Challenge. And have a guess what that is? Have a guess what that is? It's a photo shoot for supermodels, and I do the security and fitness. So I do smile when I'm at Paradise. That is actually the truth, you know.
That's awesome,
Actually
bro.
the truth.
Respect that, bro. And respect this conversation. And bro, so I'm on there. If you want to leave a comment or message me on Instagram, or even if you want to come on Speaker's Corner and have another convo, you're always more than welcome.
Salam.
So Salam, S-A-L-A-M.
Yeah.
So that's Salam Speakers Corner.
Yeah.
They've got loads of videos.
Yeah.
My one is Smile to Jannah.
Smile
Smile
to.
to Paradise.
How do you spell the last word?
Jannah, J-A-N-N-A-H.
Smile to Jenna.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're doing good there, you know.
We done excellent, bro. Especially the science thing is
I'll have another go with you sometime.
Yeah.
Point
Brilliant.
of how to live in a society.
I know.